and thank you to all our sponsors. Actuate is a platinum sponsor. I'm trying to make it more visible there. Then we have a gold sponsor, Growth in Motion, silver sponsor, Change Dimensions and Change Agility, bronze sponsor, Uptime Consulting, and then lifetime sponsorships, and Change, and the Talent Hub. But most of all, welcome to all of you who are going to listen to Flow today. We're really looking forward to that. But as usual, just a few welcoming words from our chairperson, Pitso, if you can just welcome us all to this webinar.
Thank you, Lydia, and thank you everyone for coming to our webinar. I think it's the second webinar, if not mistaken, for this year. And we're grateful to Flo for availing herself to be able to share with us. I think this is a wonderful topic, or topics we'll be dealing with today. It's interesting to see how she handles it, because these are massive topics, you know, but it's an appetizer, and it's an appetizer to everyone to look forward to our conference in November. And we just want to welcome you and say enjoy the time, enjoy the webinar. We just want to say for those who do not know much about ACMP, we've been going now for what, since 2010, not 2020, not 2010. And we're grateful for people like Lydia, Susan, Elise, Robinson, who have been holding the fort, making the fire burning for this institution to continue. And we thank people like Flo who continue to avail themselves, you know, to be able to help us to build this ship so that it becomes a force to be reckoned in South Africa and throughout Africa. And we just want to welcome our fellow colleagues in Nigeria who are ACMP in Nigeria, and probably others from other continents, not continents, countries in the continent. We just want to welcome you, enjoy, and please do not be shy to ask questions at the end. Thank you, and enjoy the session. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks, Pitsu. Thanks for the welcoming words. And just for interest sake, Flo did ask in the chat that you can just tell us where you are joining from. So if you can do it in the chat, then it will be quite interesting to see whether we do have people from other continents, and then definitely from other countries on the continent. So I just want to stop sharing here. What happens, Pitso, is when I talk about something, then I have to go out and come in again. So let me just escape here and start again. Okay, so we also will and can't wait to tell you more about the annual conference in November. On the 13th of November, we have a pre-conference workshop, and there's the main conference on the 14th and 15th of November. But we will tell you more about that then later. So at the end, we want you to, if you stay with us till the end of this webinar, one lucky winner will be in, we'll have a lucky draw, and then one person will win a free conference attendance for the 2 main conference days. So please stay on the line till the end, because you could be a winner and win free conference attendance. Just in terms of housekeeping, if you could keep your self on mute, if you could also stay engaged via the chat. I think Flo will have a very engaging session, so let's just hear from, keep putting things in the chat. In the past, we've learned a lot from the chats, because people posted documents in the chat that was very useful in terms of sharing knowledge, so please do that. In terms of the Association of Change Management Professionals, It's a global organization, and it's focused on advancing the career growth of individuals and the effectiveness of organizations by advancing the discipline and practice of change management. So we know that many of you attending today are not necessarily ACMP members, and we would like to encourage you to join the association because it's leading the way change works. And as part of that global association, we also have the ACMP South African chapter. And we want to inspire South Africans to drive and implement effective change and transform their organizations with empathy and professional expertise to achieve organizational results. And as part of our mission, we have sessions like this webinar to really share knowledge and to establish change management as a discipline in South Africa and Southern Africa per se. We do have quite a few committee members, and Pizza already thanked quite a few of the committee members, but today we would like to extend a big thank you to Rabison, Shumba, and Christine. Sorry, there's Elise, if you can just mute. Because there's somebody that's not muted.
Today is the 8th of September. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Bronwyn, if you can just mute yourself.
We have got 4 August requests still in process.
Elise, is it possible to mute Bronwyn? Okay. Sorry, we want to say a big thank you to Rabison and Chris. They were part of the founding members of the ACMP SA chapter. And from this year, they are taking more of a backseat. But as you can see, Rabison is still very involved. But Philip the Cock took over from him. Rabison did the handover recently. And Philip will now be the communications and marketing director. But we'll always see Rabison and Chris being involved in the ACMP. But we also then thank you for all the assistance that you've given over the years and that you'll continue to give. And a thank you to all the other committee members that's helping to get the ACMP SA chapter, keep it sustainable. So the reason why we are all here today, and I see we have quite a lot of participants, is to hear Flo, the change whisperer, chatting to us about change fatigue and change resistance. So she's the founder and director of Floconsult, a niche change leadership coaching and consulting company. She's a change management expert, leadership coach with 25 years of experience in implementing change and coaching leaders across various industries and NGOs. So Flo is very, I would say, helping on an NGO level, doing pro bono work, and keeping herself fit also to help others. So she did like 5 kilometers this morning, and it sounds like she's doing it every single day, Flo. The 5 kilometers for
yes,
September.
it's for Rainbow and Smiles. It's for Rainbow and Smiles cancer, children's cancer support. So,
yes, so you can see that she's putting her feet where her mouth is as well. So her focus is on equipping leaders with skills of empathy, and you can see how that aligns to our vision as the ACMP SA chapter, and kindness, which has a positive effect for all staff under their care. In the African culture, we refer to the same as Ubuntu. And then her areas of expertise include leadership coaching, culture, well-being, and employee engagement. She's a keynote motivational speaker on succeeding through adversity and adapting to change by tapping into one's inherent strengths. She's a mum to 2 teenage sons, and her hobbies, I don't know where you get the time, Flo, walking, gardening, and traveling. And you can see she also has a podcast, Flow with Flo, that you can go and listen to on Spotify. So thank you, Flo. I'm going to hand over to you
Thank you.
understanding change fatigue and change resistance. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lydia. And it's always so weird to listen to someone talking about you, and you're like, ooh, okay. I don't know if I do all that much, but thank you. I appreciate the
Thanks.
introduction. And yes, yeah, no, the 5 kilometers a day definitely is a massive change. I'm not yet suffering from change fatigue just yet. I have another 22 days to go. I am counting day by day. But it does make us think about a child who has cancer, who has to take all these medicines every day and chemo. And so I only have to do 5Ks. They're doing the heavy lifting. But thank you for that share. And everybody, please support Rainbow and Smiles. Just look them up, Rainbow and Smiles, and anything you can donate to them helps the children that need the chemo care and all of that. But that is not the purpose of the webinar today. Let's go back to the topic. So the intro has been done, and I thought I would segue with this little picture of, I suppose he's like a little alien, sort of. I think some of us feel like that sometimes on bad days. And it says, when you haven't even gone to sleep yet, and you already can't wait to come home from work tomorrow. So sometimes change fatigue kind of feels like that. When you are so tired that all you look forward to when you go to work is going back home. So I'm going to unpack the topic in a different way. And I've been introduced in the official way, etc. What I did want to speak about is the fact that out of everything that we talk about when we introduce ourselves, or when we rock up at work in our various professions, we are all these things. I am a sister, I have nephews and nieces, I'm an aunt, I'm a cousin, I'm a mother, I'm also a mother to 2 Yorkies. So my Yorkshire Terriers also think that they're children. So I suppose I have 4 boys then. Granddaughter, daughter, entrepreneur, friend, neighbor. We all have... I'll just wait. I can now hear myself, but it's okay. I'm sure it'll go away. So
it's somebody with the name Mpuneng who's not on mute.
I think she's muted now. It's cool. So out of all of these things, I'm a human being first, right? And then we are all these things, and all of us are like that. And I will come back to why I've put this little hexagon there, and it will be a reminder for certain things. So I always like to start any talk that I do with a little bit of a story that brings us back to the topic. So this is a picture, and it says difficult roads often lead to beautiful destinations. So what I want to talk about quickly is, when you are planning for a holiday. So I like to take my boys to, I think somebody's not muted. If you'd like to just click mute, or somebody can, because I'm sure people are hearing feedback, but it's cool, we'll carry on. So when I drive to Sun City, it's 2 hours, just about 2 hours. And I always think it's round the corner. And I tell myself, I prepare myself and I say, it's just round the corner. Boys, get in the car, let's go. And as we pass Hartbeespoort, my son always says, have we arrived? Like, we've got another way to go. Maybe like maybe an hour, right? Then they'll forget about it. Then we turn off and it starts to say, Majakane. And we're all getting excited. We're nearly there, because it's one straight road. But it's 75 kilometers of one straight road. And through there, you've got lots of townships in between. You've got lots of bumpy roads in between, potholes galore sometimes, right? So why I talk about this is every road we travel, every journey, every project we do, the road is sold as smooth. We always think the road's going to be smooth. We're not going to have bumps and humps. I'm not going to have to dodge the cows and the goats and whoever else is in the road. And at some point, the signpost says I can go at 100 k's an hour. Sometimes it even tells me I can go at 120. But guess what? I can't. Because if I do, the road is so bumpy, I'm actually going to ruin my shocks or actually have an accident. Or a monkey is going to jump into the road and that monkey doesn't know anything about 100 kilometers an hour. So why I give this analogy is because when we go through major changes and we go through all these big projects and initiatives and even change in our personal lives, we're always going to have these difficulties or these potholes. And I'm going to come back to that potholes analogy. But the destination, once we get there, it's so nice because then they can chill and go on segways. I did try this once. Please, adults, be careful on these things. I fell off. Apparently, you can never fall off. Guess what? I think I must have been their first customer to fall off. My children didn't fall off, but I did. But let's keep going. So let's dive into the topic itself. Change fatigue, change resistance. And, we framed the topic understanding change fatigue and change resistance because, as Peter said, it's a really, really big topic. And how do we go about it? So what I tried to do, and I'm trying to remove I've got a little floating, okay, there we go. I had a little floating panel there. I couldn't see anymore. Okay, there we go. So change fatigue and change resistance, I've put it as almost like a balancing act because it is a balancing act. And somebody said to me, surely change resistance comes from change fatigue. So yes, that is a view. It's a school of thought. In all the experience combined on this call, we all can say something about change fatigue or change resistance. So what I've tried to do here is to look at them almost as co-balancing aspects. And when we look at change fatigue, let's define it a bit. So what are we talking about? How do we feel? Because this is about people, right? So it's people fatigue and it's people's resistance. Apathy, the passive resignation, being disengaged, that loss of control, the hopelessness. And if I give a practical example, in change fatigue, you can have change fatigue that's coming from too many initiatives, maybe too close to each other, they're landing at the same time, on the same audience. You can also have change fatigue or burnout symptoms, burnout and adrenal fatigue. So when you talk about adrenal fatigue, that's where you really don't want to be. Whether it's in your personal change journey or in corporates impacting individuals, adrenal fatigue is literally medical. It's become medical illness. And if I give a practical example, when I was 22, I was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I worked for one of the big consulting firms. And I mean, life was fantastic, right? No kids, I'm just doing my thing. I loved my job. I was a junior consultant then. I would work almost 24/7 sometimes. Even if I was the one asked to print the steer code documents, there I was at 11 p.m. standing by the printer printing, and sometimes we'd work through the night. And to me, it was all fun. And then the one morning I woke up and I couldn't open my mouth. I couldn't open my mouth. I didn't understand what was going on all my teeth were painful. I thought maybe I had dental issue. I go to the dentist. The dentist says it's not dental. Eventually they sent me to a neurologist and he said to me, you've been clenching your jaw. You are suffering from adrenal, you have burnout. So I said to him, but I don't understand. How can I have burnout? I love what I do. They said, yes, you may love what you do. So what I had was eustress. So I had good stress, but I had too much of it. And I was not resting. My body was not resting. So the reason I talk about this is change fatigue. We always think it's only the negative, the distress, which it mostly is. But you may find your top performers in organizations. What happens to your top performers? We give them more work, don't we? Because you can rely on them, because they're good at what they do. And then we give them more and more and more. And in the end, they don't have a life. But they're still enjoying what they're doing. Then they get sick and then they get burnt out. Now we've got a bigger problem. So I like to mention both because there are actually two lenses to change fatigue. If we look at the other sides, change resistance. So yes, the person who said it's often a symptom of change fatigue. This is correct. It may be a symptom of change fatigue, but resistance can also come from, it may not be multiple projects, but if a project has, and I'll come to the root causes just now, I won't go too far ahead. The fear of loss of control. So resistance may also come from something nice happens to you. You win the lotto. Okay, none of us have won the lotto, but it would be nice, right? You win the lotto and your worries are now, who wants to maybe take some of my money and what am I going to do with it and how am I going to invest it? And now you're stressed, but you're stressed about something you really should be excited and happy about. but it's because you are fearing that you're going to lose control of how your life used to be. Your life is going to change. And fear is attached to resistance quite a lot. So we are fearing the unknown. And I love this acronym. And it was off Pinterest. I'm not sure who the actual author is. But fear, here, they have it standing for false expectations appearing real. So it may be a false expectation, the what if. So when the what if rules in a change, it can create resistance. So when we announce a change, people immediately, we all think of what we stand to lose from the change happening, not necessarily what we can be excited about. And a big part of change management is helping people to understand both, helping people to understand why could you be looking forward to this? But if it is a negative change, like a restructure, you're helping people to understand how does this affect me? So either way, the engagement is very important. So not allowing people to express their feelings, or when somebody says, I'm not sure about this change, usually their head gets chopped off. No, what do you mean? And this is a good idea. And no. When somebody then listens, we are acknowledging and validating that their feelings they're not crazy. And it's important to listen. Change is inconvenient, and sometimes it is costly to change. Oh, I'm seeing the question in the chat. Will we be able to receive a copy? Yes. Oh, thanks for answering. Yes. Thanks, Susan. So I will share this copy afterwards. And then resistance is feedback. So when somebody puts up their hand and says, I'm not happy with this, we welcome that in change, because then we understand what the landscape looks like. Passive resistance is a lot harder to work with, because you can't quite tell. The person's just not coming to the meeting, or they're just not engaging, and they're not saying anything. So I always say active resistance should be welcomed, because then at least you understand what you are dealing with. And I'm just, you want to refer to the study by Harvard Business Review. And it revealed that the average employee dealt with 10 enterprise-wide changes in 2022 alone. I'm pretty sure this was an American survey. Usually it's American. So I'm not sure about outside of the world, but 10 enterprise-wide changes is a lot of change. And this is just an example. So if we take it back to organizations we work with, organizations we work for, enterprise-wide changes just make the size of the change a lot bigger. But also, a lot of the time, the change is landing on the same people over and over and over again. And that is where we land up with the fatigue coming in. Okay. I was about to say, I hope you guys can see the screen. All right. So I'd like to take a segue to a different perspective. So how we respond to change impacts our susceptibility to change fatigue, to change resistance, our individual styles, the way in which we prefer to see the world, our left-brainedness or our right-brainedness. And this we use when we are training, even with the HCMBOK training. There's an HUCMI piece. And it's from Ned Herman, creative brain. But why I refer to this is in a change process, when we are communicating and engaging, if the change leader, sponsor, etc., is more left-brained, what's going to happen? They're going to talk a lot about the facts and the figures and the numbers, and this is good for the business. And the people that are not left-brained can't hear that communication coming through. They can't relate to it. Relational people prefer the face-to-face engagements, virtual engagements, where you can actually ask questions. So leave your channel open for that. So the reason I'm making us look at this is when we talk about engagement, it's very important to address all 4 brain dominance elements: the analytical, people with the analytical side, the more practical side where they want the plan. What's the plan? Address the experimental side, the why. What is the big picture? So if an individual does not know the goal of the change, where are we going? Which is why failed projects can be very challenging, because the project goal wasn't actually met, but sometimes people didn't know what the ultimate goal actually was. So you're piling on more change in an area where the why was never explained to begin with. So explaining the why is not negotiable. You have to include it. But I will speak to that in the solutions. So I've split the talk into kind of, let's understand it, let's look at some of the root causes, and let's look at some of the recommendations, at least from the perspective of where I'm coming from. You know, there are many schools of thought of change fatigue and change resistance, and I do not profess to be the holder of all perspectives, but I just wanted us to look at it a little bit differently. So our individual styles are important. And by the way, if you have any questions in relation to the slides themselves, I'm happy to answer as I go, or I can answer at the end as well. So here's another perspective in understanding change fatigue, especially the resistance side, generational differences. It can result in varying levels of change fatigue and resistance. And I'm also going to segue this with, let's not go the biased route. So the biased route says the baby boomers are going to resist change more because they're older, and then the younger ones are going to pick up change more because they're younger. It does not follow, not at all. In fact, there's a gentleman I once worked with, and he worked within data centers. And he was now nearing retirement. And he was explaining to me how 30 years before, about 30 years before, what we were walking through, the doors were so thick because it used to be a bomb shelter. And he was talking about how the systems changed from being the size of a room to being the size of literally your laptop. And he had gone through all of those changes. He wasn't resisting any of them. He said, well, change is life. Life has changed. So there's a lot of wisdom that can be gained when the generations work across with each other. So within corporates, we have to remember this. Yes, our generation alphas and our generation Zs will come into an organization, and if the way we are running the organization, if we are communicating only using one channel, they might not go to email, for example. It might be easier for them to communicate on something that comes through easier on their device, you know, whether it is workplace or it is Yammer or whatever the case may be. So it's important to consider that, because the way that we implement projects can make people tired. So we create potholes when we implement projects. And I'm going to go into the root causes now that I like to call potholes. And you know, when you resurface a pothole, as soon as it rains, that pothole opens up again, right? So we sometimes put in patches in projects that the friction is still there. And I will explain what I mean by that. So let's go to root causes. I see there are two perspectives here. There are organizational stresses that can cause change fatigue and change resistance. Then there are individual stresses. If we look at this little picture here, so, you know, I always think of change in organizations as like an air control tower. You know, we were trying to control projects and planes landing, and especially if you're in an enterprise program management office. But this picture here is what we obviously don't want, where, you know, the air control is kind of going, I don't know, do whatever. So in organizations without an EPMO, where projects are landing in an unrelated manner. So business area A is implementing this, business area B is implementing something else, but it's landing on the same population. So for example, in a financial institution setup, how many changes land at branch, if there are branches or call centers? Almost every change somehow lands up with the call center agent or with the poor banker. And they're supposed to just figure it all out. And sometimes they land too quickly, too soon. So in Agile, the teams will be so excited. Oh, we can release every 2 weeks. Yeah, but you're releasing to the same people. And then you say you're going to train them. When? So they just see changes. And then they start to get really tired because they need to service customers. And then they need to figure out all these changes. And then the sponsor walks around and visits the branches, and they must look like they know what they're doing. And yet they've got customers complaining. So I'm giving branches as an example because many things land at the customer facing side. So any organization that is customer facing staff, you have to be cognizant of how much change lands simultaneously, which is why the air control tower is so important. So some of the stresses, some of the potholes, low trust is a very big stressor. So, but low trust comes from broken promises. So we are going to implement project A, and this is what you are going to see at the end. It's going to be amazing. And then it doesn't land, or it gets stopped, and no one says anything after that. There isn't even a communication that it stopped. So it's a broken promise, and people stop to trust whether things are actually going to be landing. Lack of confidentiality is also a very big one. So at a line manager level, or in a project, somebody may express their concern confidentially to say, I'm just really worried about. Before they know it, everybody knows. And it could only have come from one person. Maybe it's their manager. So lack of confidentiality eats away at our ability to absorb the change, because now we don't trust the next change, and we don't trust opening our mouths and saying something. So the fatigue, sometimes organizations create environments that increase the fatigue. So a lot of change is not necessarily a bad thing. It is how we do the change. Look at startups. Startups are known for change, right? That's all they ever do. Change, 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 change. But startups also have this open culture. Psychological safety is high. I come as I am, and it lasts for a while. But when they become a very large organization, they've got to put in systems, but still retain the trust. Change collision. So a lot of you know this one. Sometimes can be interchanged with saturation. So unplanned changes simultaneously on the same people. Unplanned. So there are planned changes, then there are emergency changes. So we must remember, in every business, the emergency changes take priority. Maybe a system is down, something needs to be fixed. So now project A goes into place, but now it's high priority, but high priority is also the customer engagement, high priority. So everything becomes high priority, and it becomes change collision, like these planes that look like they're about to fly into each other. And what it does is it splits the focus of the brain. We don't know what to focus on as the humans. Going, okay, am I focusing? So what do people do? They focus where the politicians are. And when I say politicians, I don't mean in a government sense. I mean, they focus where the politics is being played. So if sponsor A has more power than sponsor B, they're going to split their focus and focus on sponsor A, who possibly impacts their salaries, and not on sponsor B, who might even have a more important project. So that split focus we need to watch out for. And change saturation, more changes than people can absorb. What I spoke about in terms of the being able in an agile world, the fact that you can release every 2 weeks doesn't mean you should, but you can. Maybe you prepare it as from a technology perspective, but it doesn't get released immediately, because then you have saturation. I remember there was a tension at some point in one of the projects I worked on a while ago, where the release teams wanted to keep releasing these new changes, and they're so excited. Look, we've put a big red button over here. And they said, yes, but then the consultant is going to get there in the morning and their screen looks different. So every 2 weeks is going to look different. You're going to cause anxiety. And also the learning teams could not train at the pace that the release teams could release. So it's very important that the air traffic control happens right across the entire ecosystem. Low engagement is a big one when it comes to root causes of change fatigue. And low engagement is within the control of the organization. Insufficient two-way feedback. And I emphasize two-way. So when people say we communicated, you sent an email. Yeah, we sent a flyer, we sent a newsletter. Okay, how do you know people got it? How do you know can people reply? Who is watching that inbox? Who is watching are we doing a town hall? If we're doing a town hall, are we leaving enough room for questions? Even if it's a virtual one. When we say any questions, don't expect people to unmute and ask, because they're not going to. People don't like being on a public platform virtually. Ask them to put it in the chat, or ask them to use an anonymous platform like Slido, where you get their question, but they can stay anonymous. And you can moderate the questions as well. But two-way feedback is very important, because it helps people to build that resilience that they need to handle multiple projects. I spoke about the why, the goal. So if the goal is not clear, like earlier we spoke about the 5 kilometer walk that I did this morning, right? But the reason I'm doing this 5 kilometers every day is I have a goal. And I know what the goal is. The goal is the more I do it every day, the more funds that are raised for these kids, right? So my goal is clear. So when I don't make 5, if I run out of time, I try and make it up later in the day. Then I'm like, okay, I got my 5. So people need a target. We need a goal to strive for because it gives us a sense of purpose. So when your projects are not clear on the why are we doing it? And you know how you know? The grapevine, people will whisper by the water cooler or in the kitchen. They're like, so do you know what's going on? The other's going, no, I don't know, hey. But then in walks the boss and they're like, yeah, it's going great. And so explain the why. And what is in it for the person? The what's in it for me is important. Even if what's in it for you is you get to understand what's happening. There may not be a direct benefit. In fact, in restructures, and I'd like to emphasize this, in a separation where people are going to be given Section 189s to leave, it doesn't mean you stop communicating with them. You actually have to increase your empathy and engagement. You have to handle it sensitively. So when they leave the organization, they're not more wounded because of the way that the change has been managed. So the how becomes really important. And the last one I'd like to talk about is direct versus indirect cultures. Now, this one's an interesting one. And I learned this when we went through a very big separation process, when I worked for ABSA, with the Barclays and ABSA. And what I realized and I learned is cultures are different. Western, African cultures, Asian cultures. So what happens with direct cultures is direct cultures are very exactly that. So communication is direct and it's eye-to-eye contact and everything is quick, and let's go. Indirect contact, nothing is direct. Indirect contact is, somebody say, are we on the same page? You'll sort of get a yes, but the person doesn't actually mean yes. They'd like to engage more. But if they're talking to someone from a direct culture, that person may not see the nuances that actually they're not getting this. I had a mining company that I worked with the one time, and the mining company had put in an amazing canteen for the miners. And every day there was pap and vleis. Or for us who are not from South Africa, people are not from South Africa on the call, there was, the normal mealie meal, sadza, pap, I'm not sure, the fufu, other words we use, right? With the vegetables and the meat. So they served that every single day. And the company MCO was from a direct culture. And the employees stopped eating. The miners stopped eating the food after about 2 weeks. It was being thrown away wholesale. Then the company said, we're going to close the canteen. Then we said, okay, hold on. Let's just understand why. When I spoke to the miners, their first point was, these guys don't respect us. I said, okay, what do you mean? And they said, who told them that all we want every day is pap and vleis? We never said that. They never consulted us. Who says I don't like hamburgers? Who said I don't like toasted sandwiches? So you see, it went in a completely different direction to the intent that the company had. But it is because it was a direct versus indirect. Because the CEO said, why didn't they just say so? I said, because it's an indirect culture. They may not necessarily say so because you look so excited and they're not going to counter you. So you needed to ask in an indirect way and pick up the vibes from there. So there's that from an organization side. Individual stresses, I'm going to pop this up because that little, on the picture, when you see the slide, you'll see some of the major life stresses. But I like to talk about the individual stresses because when we come to work, we are coming as a whole person with our issues to work. Then we are suffering from organizational change fatigue, and it adds on to our own fatigue that we've got internally back at home with our families. So major life stresses, and this was a Pinterest survey. I'm not sure how it landed up on Pinterest, but I'll see if I can find the actual source. But if you go onto Pinterest and you type major life stresses, you'll find it. So it talks about the things we know, right? The death of a spouse, divorce, marital separation. It talks about dismissal from work, retirement. So yes, these are obvious ones. Pregnancy, it speaks about changes in health of a family member. But there are some which we've experienced a lot, especially post-COVID. So COVID did many things. It didn't just take our loved ones away. Certain effects of COVID have lasted long beyond COVID. So post-COVID stress is real. life changed, and it's changed permanently. So for example, the return to work, there was work from home, now there's return to work, and it's a very stressful process, right? Companies are trying to go, okay, let's do this day and this day, but people's life circumstances also changed. So the change fatigue may be coming from the fact that people are now being asked to turn themselves inside out and be that person they were before COVID, 3 years ago. But the person's changed. So the post-COVID is very important to just remember, keep top of mind. Things like moving house, starting a new job, financial distress, loneliness. Loneliness is linked also to people that live on their own. Maybe they don't have family here, and there's always an assumption that when you get home, you're cool. It's important to watch out for things like loneliness. It's related to mental health. Single parenting is never going to be easy. It does not matter how many people talk about it. It does not matter how many organizations like to sort of make it seem like, yeah, no, we're cool. You have to look out for the single parents, whether it's a male, it's a dad or a mom. It is not an easy thing for an individual to go through. Social media has become a huge source of stress, sorry. So I get to work, especially the younger generations. What do? They're on their phones, right? And then they're on Facebook. And there was a picture I saw on LinkedIn. Oh, somebody's joined who's very nice and conversational there, but I'll try and keep talking over it. So there was a young person who posted, I don't know if we're able to mute them, because I think everyone can't
we
hear
are.
me.
Shamiso,
Okay, cool.
it's Shamiso.
All
Elise,
right.
if you can just mute Shamiso.
Thank you.
I think Flo can also mute them from her
Can-
side.
I can't see because I have chat on the one view and then I have the presentation.
Okay.
So I think I can't, don't allow me to control it. So if you can, it's probably better. Thanks, Susan.
That's fine. We'll do it.
Thank
Flo,
you. Thank you. Thank you. So with social media, it is in everything we do, but it can also be a source of stress when people try and be what social media says they should be. And these are the same people coming to work. And what also happens sometimes is there's a very fine line between what I post to social media and what links me back to my job. And those things can cause additional organizational stress. People get into trouble for what they put on social media, but sometimes organizations need to explain what the rules are. What is the policy? What can be done and what can't be done? Can you take a picture of yourself in the company boardroom and post it on your social media? So these things are not clear, but I bring them in because it adds little potholes to the situations. So the potholes don't have to be big all the time, but they become big as a result of the combination of individual stresses and organizational stresses. Nutritional deficiencies is an important one. So we talk a lot about mental health now in the workplace, especially post-COVID, which is correct. Who's talking about physical health? What we're actually eating? There's not enough talk about nutritional health. So when I get home, I eat whatever I want, right? Then I get to work and maybe I have a sedentary job. Like take a developer, they sit all day. What are they eating when they're sitting all day? Are we adding to their health declining? Or are we making fruit available at the workplace? Are we looking at the options that are available in the restaurants, in the canteens that people go and buy from? So if there's only KFC across the road, people are just going to buy KFC all the time, but an organization can change that. You can shape that because that causes people to be unhealthy. And when they're unhealthy, they are more susceptible to stress. So, and that fatigue we're talking about can be because there's not enough happy hormones happening, within individuals. So that kind of sums up on root causes. A very important aspect, though, of understanding the fatigue behind change is the mindset. So controlling negative anticipation is very important. So it comes in many forms. When people feel a change coming, they assume it's going to be negative. Maybe change history plays a part as well. This project didn't work, that project didn't work, or something in their personal lives has made them always be on the lookout for what if something goes wrong. So we go into what if mode, and then we spin. So psychologists refer to something called anxious fixing. So when we're faced with anxiety, we tend to immediately jump into action mode. The ones who like action. So let me fix it. Then I won't be anxious anymore. But anxious fixing doesn't really help the people around us, because we're like always stressed. We're always expecting the next, bad thing to come our way. But it can also then change the language people use within the workplace and within their own lives. So change fatigue, you can see the symptoms when people start to say, no, I can't do this, I can't help you, or this is impossible, or so the wording is negative, and we need to look out for it with people, because change fatigue symptoms are not so obvious, but it's in the way people become apathetic. So apathy comes with negative wording. When they are feeling positive, it comes with more positive engagement and positive wording. And I like this little quote here, and this is from Pinterest. I love hanging around Pinterest. It says, anxiety is fear with negative anticipation. Excitement is fear with positive anticipation. You control which one you see. We do control which one we see. But it's important that I'm in the right mental space for me to be able to control which one I see. So organizations can go through many, many changes. Some people seem to ride the wave so much better than others. And what could be some of those reasons why they ride the wave so much better? And also, when we look at the impact of change fatigue and resistance, so why do we worry about change fatigue? It's like, okay, so there's change fatigue, so what, right? So there are a couple of very important reasons why we worry about it. So this Gartner survey here, so it's like a ticking time bomb, change fatigue. 45% of HR leaders say their employees are tired of change or suffering from change fatigue. So that's like half the population of employees. If you look at this particular survey, it's quite a lot, right? And that can result in certain behaviors coming through, or certain unintended consequences. So I'm going to ask you guys this question. What could be some of the impacts of change fatigue and resistance? What's the outcome? What's the fallout? What happens? And you can put it in the chat. I'm curious to see what comes through there. So impact of continued change fatigue, what could happen in organizations? Let's see. Cynicism, yes. Angela, hey. Yes, cynicism, definitely. Everybody becomes a cynic. Disengaged employees, low morale, people leave, failed projects. You can tell we've all been there. Loss of revenue, yes. Absenteeism, toxicity of the culture. So as you can see, even from our own thoughts in the chat, there's nothing good that comes out of continued change fatigue and resistance. Presenteeism, oh yeah, that's a big one. Hey, presenteeism has become a real big problem, especially with some organizations' way in which they've done return to work. Guys, you've got nothing but presenteeism happening, because people are there, but they're not really there because they were forced to come on a particular day and they weren't sold the change. And so thank you for sharing. And this helps all of us. So I've got a few that I had put here that I'm pretty sure you've all covered. Unfinished projects are costly. Health issues, and I think that has been mentioned as well. It impacts the employee value proposition, right? Like you said, people leave, resignations. And it also impacts the attractiveness of the organization. So, we always say, how your EVP is when you look at, we measure NPS score with customers. Would you refer this company to your friend to go and buy from, or to use their services? The same is also for organizations. Would your employee refer their friend or family to come and work for your organization? And if that NPS score, if that answer is low or it's no, there's a problem that needs to be attended to. We spoke about the low trust, and many of you also mentioned the disengagement, reduced productivity, and it goes on and on, right? So thank you for the contributions, because it really helps us to remember why we need to solve for change fatigue. We can't just leave it, because it does a lot of harm to the very organizations we're trying to save. So if we look at some recommendations on what are some of the possible solutions. So I like this picture. I picked it up from one of my colleagues taught me to look up flight tracker. It's the most exciting tool because you can see if somebody's flying, you can see where their plane is. Anywhere in the world, you can put in the airplane flight number and you can track the plane, track it landing. So thank you for that to my colleague. And I picked up this one on flight tracker. It's just the planes that are around OR Tambo sort of landing. I'm sure it's other airports as well. But they are clearly all sort of either waiting to land or they're on their way to land. So the air traffic controllers know exactly where all of these planes are. And the reason I've picked that up is it's very important to monitor the organization. We must constantly be in monitoring mode so that we see where change fatigue could likely happen. I've put 7 points there around the monitoring. Monitor human impact of planned and unplanned changes. So when we talk about, and this is my favorite, in the world of technology, because there's a lot of digitization happening, right? We talk about small enhancements. There's nothing small about a small enhancement because the IT people will tell you, no, it's very small. No, we're just adding a button here. And guess what? People wake up in the morning and they can't use the system or they don't know where to find what they were looking for. So the human impact is never as small as the technology people think it is. There's always layers because we are like onions, we have layers. So monitoring that impact is important, which means from a change management point of view, if there's no change management advisory built into the project's world, big, small, there's no advice going there, they're not going to look at the human impact immediately. They'll only talk about training. Yeah, we're going to train them afterwards. Yeah, but what if the change impacts people's ability to actually use the function? Or if it causes additional stress right now, can it wait? If the answer is yes, then let it wait. So those things are things that can be monitored within a change management process. Focus on on health and well-being indicators. These are indicators you find within HR. So one of the challenges we have sometimes in change fatigue is we have leaders who are leading not in an exemplary way. I don't want to call them toxic leaders, but they are leaders that lead badly. But nobody really calls those leaders to account. And actually they rise and they keep rising. And it's bizarre. You know, the bully keeps rising. But where you see the indicators of change fatigue within a business area is when you look at the well-being indicators. Absenteeism in that area, people taking sick leave, frequent sick leave. So what happens is people start to exhibit signs of change fatigue, and sometimes you can narrow it down to a particular business area. Then you need to understand what's happening here. It may not be the leader, it might be something else, but it's important to look at these well-being indicators. Absenteeism is an indicator that tends to be looked at for disciplinary reasons alone. No, it's a wealth of information, and that can be used to understand what is happening in this area. Why do we have all this absenteeism and sickness and all of this? Or the other indicator is, how come nobody's taken leave in a year around here? What's going on? People need to rest. People need to take some time out, otherwise they're going to get fatigued. Build in these, so these proactive rest periods are important. If people, even if they're not going on holiday, you know, they might just be being at home, or maybe they're going to go to visit their parents or visit family or whatever, they need to take the rest periods. There are certain financial institutions that actually call it core leave. So core leave, it's in investment banking. In core leave, when that person takes that 2 weeks of core leave, no one in the organization is permitted to contact them, even to call them. In fact, it's a disciplinary offense when you call them, because they need to disengage completely. So generally speaking, organizations have made it okay for people to be on leave, but they're still calling them. They're still emailing them. They're still letting them get in touch with the office. So what leave is that? So the person comes back as tired as when they left, and then they are still fatigued. So sometimes our organizational policies need to match what we're trying to do in terms of change fatigue. Dedicated channels I've spoken about to respond to questions when we put in big changes and to cut through hierarchy. So you know how in most changes, people can't just go and ask the CEO a question because, that's the big boss. And I mean, you need to cut through the hierarchy. You need to have a platform where the CEO can see what everybody's asking. And if the senior leaders want to respond, they should be able to. It shouldn't be so communications needs to be flattened when we are doing big organizational changes. So it's unlike business as usual communication where it has to go through 3 or 5 levels. Big changes, it must be one level if possible, so that it's easy and quick to respond to the person. And there are platforms that allow you to do that. Leaders need to be aligned on messaging. I can't emphasize this enough. How many times have we seen organizational changes where when you ask leader A, why are we doing this or what's happening? And you ask leader B, the answers are completely different. And we can control for that. We can give them, they should have the equivalent of not scripting per se, but simply a guideline to say, these are the frequently asked questions you may get. These are the responses. So leaders need to be aligned on the messaging. And if they don't know, they shouldn't guess. If they don't know, they should say, let me find out and come back to you. But that takes vulnerability, of course. But it's important not to just guess, because people will believe what you say. Because in a change, leaders become change leaders. And everybody's watching what they're doing, watching what they're saying, and emulating them. So when you have a badly behaved change leader, people become badly behaved. I don't know, they copy, and it's not because we're like sheep or anything. It's just people are looking for guidance, and they'll go to where the guidance is. The last two are related. So we want to customize the messaging, the communications, to speak to the facts, the emotions, the plan, where we're going. Remember, I showed you that left brain, right brain, and the 4 quadrants. All communication must address all 4 quadrants. I want to take you back to COVID communications in 2020, when the government started putting communications out on TV, and they had the ministers appearing and the scientists appearing. Everybody had an opinion, right? However, I remember sitting watching. It was a presentation from one of the scientists. I have enough respect for the scientists. They knew what they were talking about. But the presentation was all graphs and charts and statistics. And I sat and I thought, this is on national TV. So who are they speaking to? Are they speaking to their fellow scientists, or are they speaking to the man in the street? Because if they're speaking to the man in the street, nobody's going to understand any of this. It was too complicated. So they should have positioned the messaging appropriately. So when we don't position messaging appropriately, we cause another pothole. We build a pothole because we're causing stress to the people receiving the message. When they don't understand, they're not necessarily going to come back to you and say, we don't understand. They're just going to go, oh, I don't know. Then they're going to go and ask their friend. And then the grapevine starts. And the grapevine, we all know, is much more powerful than any formal communication. And creating memories and treating people the right way. So whether a change is positive or negative, you need to treat people in the right way, with respect, with dignity. It does not matter what the change is. And any leader that's not doing that is not doing the organization a favor at all. And creating the memories is important. That's why, maybe that's why change people sometimes are called the happy clappers, and we come out with our pom-poms. And guys, there's a reason for those pom-poms. Actually, we're creating memories. It's important to take the photos, have the engagements, do the teaming. Those things help to create remember when memories. So even if you think of your own memories, you think, oh, remember that project? Oh, that project was so interesting and we had so much fun. And remember when we had that pizza night? And so memories are important to create, especially in an organization having lots of change. You need to create the memories. Then people remember the memories more than they remember the stress, that they had. Individual solutions on the individual side. So the individual solutions are related to the organizational solutions. But as a person, as you going through and experiencing the change fatigue, remember I spoke of the happy hormones? And these are the 4 sets of happy hormones. Your dopamine, your oxytocin, your serotonin, your endorphins. So we need to activate these. So when you go for a walk or you go running, you're activating both your endorphins and your serotonin when you are hanging out with your friends or being with your family, or somebody gives you a compliment. It's activating your love hormone, your oxytocin. Your reward chemical also needs activating your dopamine. A goal, meeting a goal activates the dopamine. You go, yes, I've done it, right? So you feel successful. So in organizations, that's important, because how are we activating people's reward chemicals? You know, is the project being met? Maybe there was a goal. And also doing self-care activities is very important. They talk about eating food. I almost want to say they should have written eating the right food, but yes, eating food is also dopamine. Dark chocolate is apparently one of the best. And celebrating wins. So that's something that fits both in the organizational space and the individual space. So a few tips, and I won't speak to all of them one by one, but I'd like to touch on a few because you're going to get this presentation. Keep your circle of confidence small. When you're experiencing massive change and you feel like you're going through change fatigue, don't go on social media and tell everybody how you're going through change fatigue and you're so tired, because what's going to happen when you feel better? And everyone still remembers when you posted that you weren't feeling okay. Maybe 2 years later, and you're being asked, how are you? Yeah, I'm actually fine, but you kept your circle, you made the circle very big. So in organizations, you as an individual, you keep your circle of confidence small. Whether your circle is your close friends or family, when you overshare, now you need to fix the oversharing later, and it makes you even more tired. Consciously choose positive people, events, and news. So when you're already struggling with too many changes, or your organization is going through a hectic time, don't add to it by watching news all day, because news has very few positive items. It's usually bad news or traffic accidents or crime. So what it does is it wears down your psyche. So you're trying to protect your psyche, protect your mental space. So make sure you're feeding your brain what you want your brain to consume. The same way as you wouldn't eat junk food every single day and expect to be healthy, you can't expose yourself to negative information all the time and then expect to come out feeling healthy and having a healthy mindset. So the individual solutions are very closely related to the organizational solutions around change fatigue. But change fatigue is about people. So if people can help themselves to be more resilient, so these are tips around building the resilience, because then you can go the extra mile. You can pick up another project and you can land another project because you're looking after yourself. Getting help when you need it, counselors, therapists, pastors, friends, family, whoever it is that you speak to. Don't be alone when you are feeling very, very, very stressed. Have a mantra or a theme song. So the power of yet is talked about a lot by Dr. Carol Dweck. I think she's the one that did the research around it. So when you are going through lots of organizational change, it's not over yet. So it's hard now, but it will get better. So the mindset is very important. And you can come up with a mantra. I like to use the mantra, it's not rocket science. I like to use the mantra, there's an upside to everything. I used to wonder sometimes when I went through massive change, what the upside was, but you have to stay with the hope, because hope is what is going to get you through the fatigue that you may be feeling. Having optional plans reduces anxiety. So if this doesn't work, we'll do this. If this doesn't work, we'll do this. The challenge sometimes with organizational changes is there's only one plan and nobody wants to defer from the plan, but the plans are made to be changed. When the plan is not working, you change it. So pick this as an individual and an organizational recommendation. There is a NASA engineer who made a comment to say, when we plan for sending men and women, the astronauts to space, we have a plan, but we're not married to our plan. We know that the plans can change and things can go haywire. So one of our plans is to be okay with changing the plan. And I think that's such wise advice for organizations. We sometimes need to be okay with changing the plan that we had originally put. So our beautiful project plan that looks so amazing with these tasks and subtasks and timelines, if it has to change, then it has to change. Of course, you consult widely, but don't be married to a plan that isn't working. And we talked about celebrations. allowing people to grieve is important. When a change really sucks, it's not a nice change, it's a horrible change, don't make it like it's a party, because it's not a party. A restructure is not a party. The people staying who still have jobs, the people leaving, both sides are grieving. So allowing that process to happen at an individual level is also important. And remember, during COVID and even post-COVID, we lost a lot of friends, family, people we knew, right? That grieving process, some people didn't grieve then, some are grieving now. When you lose a family member, it's the hardest thing, or a friend. So organizations sometimes choose to not notice that this person's going through a tough time. And it's important to watch the individual and understand the behavior and give them the time that they need where possible, right? And the last one is alignment with your values. So sometimes an organizational change can cause fatigue because it is going against your values. Maybe the way in which the change is being run or managed, or people, remember on media when the big companies in the US, I won't say which ones, were firing people over Zoom. So if you work for that company, that's an awful thing to do. I mean, some people could go and commit suicide. So the alignment with values is important. And when we put changes out there, let's make sure they're changes that people can put their hand to as well. To say, yes, I participated in this. You know, you get those changes where nobody wants to talk about it afterwards. They don't want to be associated with it. They say they were never part of the change because it didn't work out well. But usually it's because it landed badly and it affected people very, very, very negatively. So very, very important. And then the last thing I'm going to leave you all with, because I'd like to leave some time for questions or for comments, some time to chat, is Maya Angelou's quote. And Maya Angelou said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." So we can have multiple changes happening in organizations, but that doesn't have to become a bad thing. Yes, organizations have to watch the collision and the saturation and all those things, but they have to be human first. We are changing people. We're changing things around people. So be human first, and then the other stuff will follow. So I love Maya Angelou's quote for that. And I'm going to leave my details. My details are here on the slide as well. I'm not going to talk to them, but they're there for those that would like them. But at this point in time, Lydia, I'd like to see, because I haven't had a chance to look at the chat to see if there are any questions. And I'm thinking I can stop sharing the actual presentation. Is that okay at this point? Are there any questions on any slides?
Thanks, Flo.
Okay, perfect. Let me...
So I think we do have some time for questions. I just want to mention that if you stay till the end of our webinar, which will not be longer than 11:30, you stand a chance to win free conference attendance at our ACMP SA conference this year. So if you can stay online, that would be great. And let's hear Florence. Anybody else? There are great comments in the chat as you were, I wouldn't say questions per se. So if there's anybody with a particular question, please just unmute and then you can ask Flo the question.
I'm looking at the chat
or
now.
If you want to put it in the chat, you can also put your question in the chat.
Yes, please do that. I'm just reading the comments as I go, and I can also just maybe respond to some of these comments as I'm reading them now. So Repson, you made a good comment. Repson said, sometimes we change for the sake of change. So many programs in a short space of time, people can only take so much. So that saturation, oh, I see a hand up. I'll just finish talking about the saturation. So the saturation sometimes also happens when new leaders come in. So there's a new boss. Now the new boss wants to implement, throw away the other project, bring another project. It's bad for the organization, especially if you're removing it for the sake of it. So that's very important to remember. We have a hand up from M. Lutango. Would you like to go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Flo, for a great presentation, great insights. Just a quick question from my end. in my organization, change management is a new thing. There hasn't been a change management team, but one of the greatest challenges that we face is leaders kind of dismissing the impact of change. So it almost seems to be perceived as we're making mountains out of molehills. And what suggestions would you have in terms of really breaking that kind of mindset, which really minimizes or dismisses that this is a real impact and it has real consequences, within the organization? Thank you.
Okay,
That's my question.
thank you. Thank you. Great question. So there are two perspectives I'd like to answer that question from. The first perspective is when the leaders are dismissive of the impact of the change, there's something happening in their space. They are literally suffering from change resistance themselves. So they don't want to think about the inconvenience of impact. They just want to get on with the job. And particularly if they're a left-brained analytical type person, they're thinking, I don't know, don't give me this people stuff. It's very messy. What you can do, remember that concept of what's in it for me. So when you explain to the leader in a way that they see how they will benefit from us understanding the impact on the people, they become a little bit more engaged. And I'll give you an example. So the leader wants to change IT system, but they want the project finished in the next 2 months and it must be finished on this date. And so people rush to this date. The impact on the people is very negative. So the way you talk to that leadership team is you explain to them how they stand to impact the business. So we talk of business impact and change risk when we talk to leaders like that. Don't talk about the people impact. They don't want to know about the people. But when you say to them business risk and change risk, and it's going to impact the bottom line, and customers are going to complain, and those complaints are going to come to them, then they pay attention because they hear business risk. And business risk can become an audit finding, right? They don't want an audit finding against their name. So then they start to go, okay, what do I need to do? So if you can link it back to the business impact, so instead of calling it people impact, call it business impact. It's the same thing. So the impact may be we need a bigger training. In fact, I don't want to talk about training because everybody likes to throw training in there. We need a bigger budget for ensuring that the workspaces are ready for the staff when we set up the building that they are moving to. So building moves are a funny one, right? People just want to take people and throw them into a building, even when the building is not ready. But the business impact becomes low productivity. The business impact becomes people are going to take longer to get to work because you haven't explained how they're going to get there. So they're not going to be able to do their job quickly enough. Then the leader goes, oh, we got to fix that. So talk about it as business impact and change risk. So when you talk about risk, the risk people listen. And the risk people are going to come and ask them about this. So when you can add it to a risk log as a change risk. So I know it sounds weird, but there are leaders that don't want to hear about people, but yet they don't really have a choice. So we call it something else and we keep moving. And they will respond as soon as they hear business impact. Does that help you?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Okay, let's see.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
There was another question maybe in the chat that I saw earlier.
From Nosi. Is it? Nosi, how do you measure?
Yeah,
do you want me to pick up this one?
Okay. Yes, thanks, Lau.
How do you measure the effectiveness of various communication channels like email? Yeah, that's a very, very interesting one. Close to most of our hearts, I'm sure. So the communication channels and measuring effectiveness. Let's take what you've put as an example, email. So I want to give you a different way to think about effectiveness of communication channels. The communication has gone out. Whether it's gone out on email, maybe it was a communication with a call to action. Maybe that communication is attend this, or the communication is go and read or go and look up this. I don't know, do your training. Go and do your training. Okay. So the way you'll know if the communication channel is effective is if the action happens. If the action doesn't happen, it means they didn't read the emails. So, I'll give an example of a project I worked on many years ago. We were getting a lot of declines from, so in financial institutions, you've got your front office consultants and bankers, and then you've got your back office teams. And they were rejecting what was coming from the front office for one reason or another. Something was always wrong, and they called it not fit for processing. So the number of instances of declines was very high. And what had already been done is the learning team said, we've gone out, we've trained the frontline, we've done everything. Okay, so when we would send emails out, for example, or we send via the group, whatever methods they were using, the way we started to check was there were videos, learning videos that the learning team had uploaded on the system. We started checking the watching of the videos. So which branches have watched and which branches haven't? Do those branches have a higher rejection rate or a lower? And it correlated. So we actually started saying to the branch managers, you're not watching your stuff. And they said, no, we're busy. We said, no, it's causing rejections of your stuff because your guys don't know what they're doing. So the way you measure communication channels is by checking the business success of what you are communicating. So it's not necessarily the channel that's the problem sometimes. Sometimes is the message being understood and is the message being read? But you do want to diversify your channels. So email has become the new spam, right? Because there are too many emails that go out, especially with remote working. So you've got to find an alternative that also helps you with that. What some organizations do is they make use of, in every organization, the company might say, we don't have WhatsApp as official communication channel. Trust me, everybody's using WhatsApp out there. So if there's something that can be shared briefly via WhatsApp, which is not confidential, because WhatsApp can't have confidential things on it, that goes to management groups very quickly, and it goes across the organization like wildfire. It trends really fast. So if you need something urgent done, use the channels that work, but also measure the business impact. So if you're getting what you're communicating, then it's working. If you're not getting what you're communicating, then you know that the communication is not working. So counting how many emails you've sent, it's an interesting indicator, but you rather count how many people have attended the training that you sent on email. Are we getting people in? If we are, it means the communication channel is working. If you're not getting anyone in, it means there's something wrong with either the message or the channel. Nosi, I hope that helps you.
Thanks, Florence. I think we only have time for one more question. And I think Eric asked, he said that there's a plan B and a plan C for the organization, but what about individuals? What's the plan B and C for individuals?
That's a great question. Oh, hey, Eric, that's a great question. Okay, so the plan A, B, C, I would say applies at both organizational level and at individual level. So at an individual level, where an organization can help the individual, and then where the individual can help themselves, I'll speak to both. So if it is a retrenchment, for example, the organization knows who they're going to retrench. Instead of just giving the person a retrenchment letter under Section 189 and saying, off you go, how about helping the person ready for their next? Provide a financial advisor into the organization that can speak to the people, provide a life coach, provide somebody that's going to help them with their next, so that as they leave, they're not just being left high and dry and thrown out of the organization. They've got the ability to make their plan B, and they've got somebody helping them to make their plan B. If it's at an individual level, so you've been retrenched. So say the organization is one of those that just chucked you out, right? Now, the plan A versus plan B versus plan C, your plan B could be, okay, I don't have a job right now, and I've got bills, and I've got to send the children to school, and you've got all the life problems, right? Now, what can I control? I can control contacting my creditors and saying to my creditors, whether it's the bank, whether it is Edgar's, Edgar's is known for calling people like 20 times in one day or whatever, call them and say, I've been retrenched, right now I don't have income, I would like to negotiate a payment plan. So the Consumer Protection Act protects you from the creditors that want to come with baseball bats and, cut you at the knees, except don't go to loan sharks. Loan sharks are very bad. But the plan B is ready yourself for the difficulty that you know is going to be coming. And then you make the necessary changes. But it's very important to still do the self-care, still try and get some exercise in. Try and do normal things as well, and surround yourselves, like we said, with positive people and people that can help you in your situation. They may not be able to give you money, but they can help you by simply being there for you and being supportive. So the plan A and plan B, and the plan C may be, okay, so do I need to sell the house? Well, if the hard answer is yes, then you need to get used to lean into what the hard answer is and do it. Because what happens sometimes is at an individual level, we resist the change. But sometimes the change then starts to attack us literally because we haven't dealt with the issue. If the bank is saying, okay, you know what, it's been 6 months now. Now what's going to happen? Then you can say, okay, let me put the house on the market. Then I'm able to get a higher sale price for the house, and I go from there. So I would say it applies to both. But at an individual level, it's got to be those recommendations I put in terms of kind of trying to do that balance of getting the help you need if you can. And remember, therapists don't have to be people that are paid. You can have a counselor that helps. You can have a pastor at church that helps you. That's not an extra payment. You can have a friend who is simply your confidant. So Erica, I hope that helps to answer the question.
Yes, it does. Thanks, Flo. I appreciate that.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Flo,
It's my
for your
pleasure.
presentation. I think Flo did provide her contact details, and we will also make the presentation available to everybody. And Flo, I'm sure you don't have a problem if people share it with their colleagues
Not
per
at all.
se. So
Please, they can share as widely as
freely.
possible. Yes,
And
yes,
Flo,
yes.
thank you for letting us know about the potholes that can become sinkholes.
Oh,
And
yes.
looking at change fatigue and change resistance from an individual as well as organizational perspective, and the link between the two. So we really appreciate that insight. And we are hoping to hear a lot more from you in future webinars. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to the organizers and to the sponsors as well. We really appreciate all the input that comes in, and it was absolutely my pleasure. And anybody wants to DM me, they're welcome to as well, on LinkedIn even. You know, I love to connect. Please connect. You know, we make the circle bigger in terms of supporting each other. But thank you,
Thanks,
Lydia,
Flo,
for having me.
that. Thank you. And just
Thank
the
you, everyone.
last things, so we have to see who's the winner of our free conference package. So let's just have a look at if you want to become a member of ACMP SA chapter, you can just go to the ACMP Global website, and all the details will be there for you to become a member. And you'll see why it's going to be better to be a member, because the conference will definitely be cheaper for you if you're a member. So now that Flo has told us about change fatigue and change resistance, I can tell you a little bit more about our conference in November. So we're going to have, firstly, there's a pre-conference workshop. It is a virtual conference, so the workshop will be virtual, but it is on what change management can leverage from coaching. So it's putting those two concepts together. Then we also are very honored because Dashini Newman is the current CEO of ACMP Global, and she's going to talk about change management, the road ahead. And that's on day one of the conference. We also have Margit Tackert that's going to talk about change fatigue. Our own, well, Ravison, I'm saying our own Ravison Shumba is going to discuss leading through change. And then Lisa Kempton from ProSci is going to discuss with us preventing and resolving resistance with the ADCAR model. On day two of the conference, we have Alison Coates, who's going to discuss with us mastering your emotional culture to reduce resistance. So you can see that Flo's conversation is going to flow to the November conference as well. We have Jens Sorg about AI and change management. Then Willie Jooste, Jeannie Brits, and Herman Groenewald is going to discuss how to ensure change management is entrenched in the corporate culture. Sarah Babb is busy with a major change management process, and she's going to tell us more about that. And then Rory, who posted about this as well in the chat, is going to discuss the wisdom of trauma. It's going to be the first time that we are going to charge some money for our conference. And that's why it's so great that one of you is now going to win a conference package. But you'll see that in the brochure that we're going to share soon, you can book for the conference. If you're a non-member, there's a particular fee. And if you're an ACMP chapter member, that means that you're an ACMP global member. The fee is a lot less for members. But we're really hoping to see you at the conference, and we would like again to thank our sponsors. Actuate, the platinum sponsor. Next time I'll put you in the middle. Gold sponsor, Growth Emotion. Our silver sponsor, Change Dimensions and Change Agility, and our bronze sponsor, Uptime Consulting, and then our lifetime sponsors, and Change and the Talent Hub International. We would, Susan, our Director of Strategic Partnerships, would take any other sponsorships for our annual conference. So if you're online and you also want to sponsor, please make contact with her. We also want to thank our strategic partner, IPM. They help us a lot with advertising our conferences. Please take note that they have their conference also in November from 19 to 22 November at Sun City. And it's about fast forward into the future of HR. So thank you again to Flo. I think we've learned a lot from you. And thank you for graciously sharing your slides as well. We really appreciate it. So let's look at the winner. Let me just get the, and remember, you have to be in here now to be able to get the prize. So the first person that we have, I don't know, is on the screen as Favor.
Oh,
is that person still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Favor, you are winner. So you can attend the conference days on the 14th and the 15th for free. So well done. And we're looking forward to seeing you there. And everybody, thanks, Favor. Just send us, please, in the chat or to Elise at acmp.co.za your details, please. And then thank you to everybody who attended today. Flo, we had record attendance, over 100. Yeah, the first time ever, over 100 people who attended the webinar. So thank you so much for that. See you at the conference, and thank you for being here. Thanks everybody.
Right. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Nicely
Thank
done,
you so
Flo.
much,
Great
everyone.
job.
Thank you so much, Rory.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
And you broke the 100. Ah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I brought everybody with me. It was a big party, you know.
Next time is
No,
1,000.
it's good.
Flo, come now. You've got to think
Oh
of multiples
my
of 10.
gosh. Really?
Thank you, Flo. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nozi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So thanks, Flo. It was great. And yeah, so we'll tap on your shoulder again.
Absolutely. Anytime. And I'll also see if I can help with the, you know, I'm a tiny business. I'll try and help with the tiny sponsorship for the conference, but I'll talk to you about that.
Okay. No, that's
Yes,
great.
I'd like
yeah.
to. I think that would be great.
No, that's great. You can chat to Susan about that.
That's
or
perfect.
Susan will contact you then about
I have sent her an
sponsorship.
email. Thanks, Lydia.
Oh yeah, I need to get to it. Hey, yes, okay.
Yes.
Thanks, Susan. I'll go back to it.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. I guess I'll just wait for everybody else to leave. Or should I just exit?
I think
Because
what
you'll
I'll
end the
ask
meeting, yeah.
Elise to end the meeting for all
Okay,
now.
perfect.
Okay,
All right. And
thank
I'll email you the presentation now.
Okay, thanks,
Okay,
Flo, and
great.
have
Thank
a
you,
good day
Lydia.
further.
You too.
Enjoy
Thank you,
Bok
Elise.
weekend.